To my right, I see this bald, slender as a needle, thin man pop out of the bushes. Okay, just picture this for a minute. He's wearing a reflective jacket, like a construction worker's jacket, early to mid-20s at best, and he's completely bald, full-on horseshoe, like the sides of his hair had grown out like some kind of an old wizard. And he's got in his hand a folded-up piece of computer printer paper. And he walks up, he pulls out, this sheet, and Aaron hands him the money, like all stealth-like through the window, like, here you go. So suspect. Seriously, a piece of folded paper? We find out soon why it's not in a Ziploc bag. He's like, listen, what I gotta tell you.
According to YouTube's guidelines shown here, videos which intend to educate are documentary by nature and do not glorify the use of drugs. Both abide by the community safety guidelines and are eligible for monetization. The following video does not glorify the use of drugs. Instead, attempts to be non-biased while delivering life-saving information disguised as entertainment. Thanks, YouTube.
Hello and welcome back to Psyched Substance. In today's video, I'm going to tell you guys about the story of the very first time that I sought after Miss Molly, MDMA, kind of as a warning to show you guys how much can go wrong. This was, I think, a very interesting experience, which is why I want to share it with you guys. And it shows everybody watching how much of a bad idea it is. Don't recommend that anybody follows in my footsteps and goes out looking for this stuff. This is a story from my past when I was a younger, dumber version of myself now. But before we jump into that video, I need to update you all on what we have now available in the Psyched shop. We have these official, I don't know if you can see with the mic there, Psyched hoodies. It's too bad that you can't see quality through the camera. This honestly feels like something that you would find at Lululemon. The quality of this hoodie is unreal. We currently have two versions available. We have the premium hoodie, which is this one, and then the basic version. Unfortunately, the only ones that are available for shipment right now is the basic version. We've only got 100 of these. They look just the same. They just don't have the same thick thread count. They're still super soft. So if you do want the premium one or the basic one, you can go to psychedsubstance.shop and pre-order the premium or place your order for the basic one. Again, only 100 available. And please let me know in the comments section if you like this style. I personally love how warped and crazy this looks. Anyway, let's dive into today's story. So, from the very first time I tried MDMA, actually, no, that's a lie. From the very second time I tried MDMA, I was unfortunately hooked. The first time I tried it was pretty lackluster. I mean, I was at a bar with some friends. We used to go out all the time and try to meet some ladies and all of that jazz. It made me feel very chatty, but I didn't necessarily like it because it didn't put me in the headspace where I really wanted to, as we called it, game. Like, I really just wanted to make friends with everybody, which was interesting. The best part of the experience, though, was when I got home and I had a shower, but it really wasn't anything to write home about, and I didn't end off the experience going, oh my God, that was incredible, I need to do that again. The dose was just not on point. After the second time that I traversed those roads, I was hooked. That was mind-blowing. And I've talked about this in a deleted video that I had posted over 3 years ago on my second channel, which I'm sure most of you have never seen. Long story short, it was amazing. Felt after that I absolutely had to recapture those feelings at any cost. This set me out on my mission to find MDMA any way that I could. Now, back then, I wasn't privileged to the knowledge that I have now, and I really had no idea where to begin. So, since I used to frequent the clubs and bar scenes, I made it my mission to, instead of approaching everybody trying to get some digits, I started approaching people, asking them if they knew where I could find M. I was like just going up to everybody in the bars being like, hey, got a weird question for you, but do you happen to know where I could find some MDMA? No. I must have just been in the wrong place. It was at least 2 to 3 weeks after that initial explosion of pleasure that I felt that I finally was able to revisit it again. One of my housemates finally found a connection. I don't know how they found this, and neither of us drove, and we had to convince someone to take us an hour and 45 minutes to pick up our first ever batch. Luckily, our other housemate, Rob, had a car. How we convinced him, I do not know. I was so broke at this time. I didn't even have any money to pay him, maybe like $10 for gas, which wouldn't have even covered it. Basically, all of my money went to buying the M. So, long story short, we get there, almost 2 hours of driving. We pull up to a parking lot at the base of a building, and we're just chilling, just looking around, wondering when this guy is gonna show up. And sure enough, off to the bushes, to my right, I see this bald, slender as a needle, thin man pop out of the bushes Okay, just picture this for a minute. He's wearing a reflective jacket, like a construction worker's jacket. He's in his early to mid 20s at best, and he's completely bald. Of course, I'm one to talk. I wear this hat because it kind of looks like faux hair, but I'm bald as well. But this guy had the full-on horseshoe, like the sides of his hair had grown out like some kind of an old wizard, and he looked hilarious. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, he looked really funny. He had like the lanky hunch, and he scurries over. He popped out of those damn bushes, and he scurries over, and he's got in his hand a folded up piece of computer printer paper. Okay, just a white sheet of printer paper. And he walks up, he pulls out, this sheet, and I don't remember, he says something to Aaron, and Aaron hands him the money like all stealth like through the window, like he's looking this way, one of these, like, here you go. So suspect. He slips us this piece of folded paper. Like, seriously, a piece of folded paper? We find out soon why it's not in a Ziploc bag. He's like, listen, what I got to tell you, this stuff, if you keep it in the heat, it will melt. And if you eat it after it melts, you'll die. It becomes poisonous. And I'm just like, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because when something's a solid and it melts, it completely changes the chemical makeup of it in order to turn it into a poison. Complete logic right there. And then he goes on to tell us a story of how he recently took a whole 8 to 12 grams in a Tupperware container camping with him. And when they got there and opened it, it had melted into pure liquid. And he's like, and we had to toss it. It was terrible. It ruined our whole trip. We were all looking forward to this. And we're just like, all right, got it. Don't put it in plastic, because the heat will cause it to melt, at which point we'll die if we consume it. He's like, yes. We're like, all right. And he's like, I recommend that when you drive, you keep your vents open and you keep the AC on blast. And we're like, what the did we just buy? You know how I always preach, test everything before you ingest it? Well, in these days, not only did I not test it, but I didn't even have a scale. No, I couldn't even weigh the shit. We would eyeball this shit, and this was all under the pretenses that we actually had the correct weight to begin with. We try to like break it up into tenths. And anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. He's finished his story. He does one of these like quick look arounds, and then as quickly as he scurried over, he scurries off. And, we're parked here, and then to our left is the road, and we just see him like actually briskly walk into a full-on jog. He looks both ways, he runs across the road, and then he runs the other direction, and he's out of our view. And all of us are just like solemnly silent in the car, the three of us. We look at each other, we burst out into one of these like, what the did we just witness kind of laugh? I'm in the back seat, Aaron's in the passenger seat, and of course we got Rob driving. I put my arms over the shoulders of the seats, and I'm leaning in, and I'm like, dude, we got to see what this stuff looks like. Aaron, ever so cautiously, unfolds this piece of printer paper, and lo and behold, what we see is this brown, moist, brown sugar-like substance that is so wet that it's stained all of the paper, like an oil stain, kind of like if you were to wrap, I don't know, peanut butter in paper, and you would see like the oil soaking in around it. It looked exactly like that. It actually looked like the dude gave us brown sugar wrapped in paper. That's what it looked like. But Aaron gave it a little taste test, licked his pinky, dabbed it on, touched it to his tongue, and he's like, oh shit. Yeah, he's like, that's M, man, that's M. I mean, you can't really tell, but it had that chemical, absolutely sour, blast your taste buds to the moon in absolute disgust flavor to it that anyone who's eaten crystalline MDMA would know. I mean, I'm sure there's other compounds that have the same just sour bitterness to it, but it definitely wasn't sugar. We knew that much. So we're like, okay, we got these moist rocks, and yeah, let's head home and measure it out. So we had bought a gram, okay, and we knew that the average dose was going to be 100 milligrams. Like, we knew that much. We knew that a gram gave us 10 doses. So since we didn't have a scale, what we did was we drove home. I took the paper, I got like a credit card, I made it into a line. This is how I used to dose everybody. I don't advise this, okay? First of all, weigh your doses. Second of all, test them to make sure you have MDMA, because there's a plethora of chemicals that go around that are entactogens, that have euphoric properties, that release dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine in a very similar fashion as MDMA, that are not MDMA, and some of which PMA, Dr. Death, can kill you. Like, if you value your own life, you have to test these compounds. And of course, weigh them, because what if, this guy who clearly thinks that melted crystal will kill you, how do we know that he weighed it? Maybe he eyeballed the gram. So maybe we were taking way more than we thought we were. Who knows? I will never know. I just know that I took this long line, took the credit card, cut it into 10 subsequent little piles. Then I would get a rolling papers, and I would make them into parachutes in the rolling paper. And then that is how we would consume it. It is not the ideal way to consume it. I mean, when you bomb it that way, it does come on and hit you like a freight train. You guys get what I'm saying. This is dangerous. Great example of not trusting what the dealer says, because whether it was liquid or solid, I don't believe it was going to kill us unless we dose too high. They must have messed up the final step, which is where you turn it from an oil into a solid, and that's why they call it MDMA hydrochloride, because they bind the chemical to hydrochloric salt. Maybe they messed that stage up and they just somehow tried to harden the oil. I'm not a chemist. I don't know what they did wrong. I would love to know. I've been curious all of these years. So if any of you guys watching understand the actual synthesis process and how you can mess up that final step, well, crystallization, and then you go from there to purification. But whatever they did, they messed up the step where they're supposed to bind it to a salt and make it an actual crystal product, because it was just like hard oil. I think even on our way home, some of it did melt. Obviously, we trusted him. We were like, oh shit, we don't want to die. Like, none of us knew anything. And this is the story for so many people who take drugs. We actually believe that if it melted, it would kill us. Anyway. So we're being as cautious as we can. We've got the piece of paper right on the vent, blasting it with AC the whole ride home. Get home, I make up these piles, and we were like, all right. We spent a solid 3 weeks of actually going out, asking strangers, putting our best foot forward, our best effort possible to acquire this compound, and we were hyped. At least I can only speak for myself. I was so excited. Rob was kind of like, on the fence, like, I don't know if I want to take this, but Aaron and I, we were like licking our lips like, oh man, like it might as well have been brown sugar candy to us. We were on the edge of our seats with excitement for what was to come. And there wasn't even a thought in my mind that it wasn't MDMA. Like, I didn't know at this time about all the drugs that are disguised as Molly that can hurt you. It wasn't even part of our reality. As far as we were concerned, we had finally found MDMA. Could have been a myriad of things. I do believe that it's MDMA because at that time specifically, Canada was actually well known for what they called the brown sugar Molly. I don't think it was known for melting Molly, but brown sugar Molly was like a Canada exclusive, and that appeared to be what we had in our possession. So I do think, looking back, that at least these initial batches were real. I've said before that I think I was taking methadone some of the time, but I think that was when we switched dealers after this. Whatever we got from this guy was well, let me explain what the experience was like. So from what I can recall, we used to combine alcohol with everything in those days, as I'm sure a lot of people who are young and get into drug use do. They, as we did, don't really consider alcohol a drug because society normalizes it, even though ethanol is in fact a drug. It shouldn't be called drugs and alcohol. It should just be called drugs. And the combination can cause dehydration. It can cause an increase of potential risky behavior just on the mental side of things. And then you're going to make dangerous decisions, such as probably taking more MDMA than you would have taken if you were sober. I think that's honestly like the biggest risk. People talk about the dehydration being a risk and how you got to drink more water, enhanced neurotoxicity factors. But I would say realistically, the biggest danger with the combo is the fact that when you're drunk, you make stupid choices because your inhibitions are gone and you're likely to take way more MDMA than you would have if you were sober. In fact, sometimes if you're drunk and MDMA is around, you will take it, period. And if you were sober, you wouldn't have touched it, which was the case for me a lot in the past as well. So that's why that combo is dangerous. The other factors are real dangers as well, but that lack of inhibitions can cause people to do some extremely regrettable things. And most of us that have been around the block a few times, don't need me to give you examples as to some of the dumb shit we've done. Like, we've been there. We know how much of a terrible idea it is, and yet we still make the same mistakes over and over. I'm off the alcohol train. I don't even drink anymore. Anyway, I digress. Let's jump back on topic here. So we had some drinks of alcohol. we decided that just taking one pile wasn't going to be enough. I mean, we were so hyped. We wanted to make sure that we really felt it. So I think we took 2.5 to 3 piles, meaning 200 to 300 milligrams, which is a hefty, hefty dose for someone who has no tolerance. And we waited around the house just for the effects to launch us into that euphoric bliss that we were hoping for. We were not disappointed. Oh no, we were lodged full of energy to the brim with that urge that you just got to move. We were pacing around the house, and we used to smoke at this time. MDMA releases dopamine, and nicotine also causes more dopamine in the brain. So when you have the combo, you got mega dopamine flowing. So we were just smoking like chimneys, smoking away, listening to some music on the porch, smoking away. And we noticed quickly that we had a surplus of energy, like just the pacing, man, the pacing. And I remember I turned to Rob and I looked at him, and the whole time I was kind of like a little concerned. Like I wanted to make sure that he liked it. Because I mean, this is the guy that we had to convince to drive us like almost 4 hours total of driving to pick this shit up. So I wanted to know that he was having a good time. And I remember he had this catchphrase that he just kept repeating through the entire night. Shit, what was it? Come on, Adam, you got this. You remember what it was. He would just giggle and say Molly. He'd be like, Molly. Rob's this Asian dude, but he grew up here and he would just giggle and say Molly. He'd be like, Rob, how are you? He'd be like, Molly. Molly. and this just continued. And we thought that it was the absolute bee's knees at the time. Knee slapping, laughing. I'm trying to sound more like an old geezer. I hope that I'm succeeding. Anyway, so Rob was having a blast. I was, euphoric as high heaven. Aaron looked like he was having a blast. I think we grabbed 1 or 2 parachutes for the road, and we were like, let's go for a walk. About an hour away from us, there was this forest walk. And, that hour walk went by like in a second. That was the first time I learned just how amazing it feels to move on this substance. It was like the more we walked, the more euphoric we felt. Each step was directly tied in with a dopamine burst in our brains. And it was like we'd step and we'd be like, oh. It was intense, man. We clearly took way too much. So we walked to the woods, and this is when the story gets a little fuzzy. But I do remember clearly falling in love with nature. And I remember walking around and feeling for the first time this incredible appreciation for the trees. Dead of night, there's like nobody around. Keep in mind, I didn't mention, but this was a house I lived in right by a university. So there was a lot of young people around if you wanted to interact with them. But at this, time of night on like a, non-club night, and we were kind of far off away from the school at this point, but there was really nobody. So instead, I was bonding with obviously my direct peer group, Rob and Aaron, but I found myself bonding heavily with nature. I used to love walking and camping and hiking as a kid. And, I went through this very depressive teenage stage where I went heavy into alcohol and I got, my heart broke and I felt crushed and I lost that connection with nature. And it was like that connection was re-blossoming. Now, I got to be careful because I don't want to make it sound like this experience was good, because ultimately it ended up being pretty bad, which we're going to get to. But there obviously are always going to be highs and lows with all of these experiences. And I remember going up to trees, feeling the bark, and just being like, wow, this feels like magic. And a lot of people do describe MDMA, especially their first times or their first few really good times, as being magic. It's a word that's commonly associated with the experience, and it is the exact word that I would use to describe what this was like. It felt like magic. And we didn't want to leave the woods, and we were associating the forest. I mean, not just me, we were all feeling it. Like there was this group vibe that we were in like a mystical, there's fairies and gnomes hiding around the corner type of forest. And we were all vibing so hard. I think we even started calling it like the magical woods. And keep in mind, in the daytime, you'd look around and be like, it's just a basic forest walk in a city that's probably got like houses behind the trees. Like it's not really much of a forest, right? It's more like those pathways behind houses, probably. I mean, I'm guessing. I can't even really remember what it was, but it definitely wasn't much of a forest. But to us, dead of night, couldn't really see much, had our phone flashlights on. It might as well have been fucking Narnia. So we're walking through Narnia. I'm chatting with the trees. We were high out of our minds. I remember we took our second booster, probably. I can't recall how much we took. I know that between the three of us, we almost went through the whole gram. So we definitely redosed once or twice. And I remember on the last redose, we were still in the woods, and these first experiences before you get a tolerance can last what feels like an extended period of time, like much longer than they should last. And we didn't want it to die. We wanted to stay in that wooded wonderland forever. And I remember Rob was getting tired and he's like, yeah, man, we should probably head home. And I was like, really? I remember there was like this big discussion for like 20 or 30 minutes of if we should head home. And every time I would just have the argument of, do you really want to leave this magic? Like I was like, guys, the woods are magic. Do you want to leave this? And then Rob would just be like, Molly. and then we just keep walking. I don't know. I feel like we walked until the sun started to creep up off in the horizon, because we finally went home, experienced that usual nasty come down that you get from these types of endeavors, and we all wanted to repeat it again as soon as possible. Now, I say this is a bad story because following this blissful experience, I actually found myself for the next 3 months being addicted to that feeling. Now, back then, I didn't know anything about drugs. I didn't know how to be safe with them, which led me to partaking in a lot of risky behaviors that could have ended very badly. And I reached a point where I honestly felt like I wouldn't be able to live without it. Like, we were taking it way more than I'm of the liberty to admit, but I've admitted in other videos. Yeah, it was really dangerous. And I was under the impression that as long as I did it like once a week, I'd be safe, which I stretched out to twice a week, maybe even more sometimes. So yeah, we were dosing way too high, way too much, not testing, not weighing. And the euphoria associated with this experience led to some very dangerous behaviors. But that is kind of how I got my foot in the door into the drug world. And it's from that led me to trying psychedelics, which put me on this whole quest of healing and this and that. So it's like where it may have seemed like it started off in a potentially dangerous, bad place, it all worked itself out and it led somewhere good. But it's not the case for everybody. And this really was a compound that for a great deal of time, I had issues with. Like, people say MDMA is not addictive, but when you take it frequently and you associate all of the pleasure in your life to those experiences, it soon becomes something very dangerous. And especially when the magic starts to drain out of it, and then you can't even get a lift from taking it like you used to, and then in your everyday life you feel like crap, it soon becomes very evident why it is not something that anyone should abuse. It's, when taken to excess, a very, very dangerous molecule because your serotonin centers take a while to replenish themselves. They say you should give at least, like at minimum, 1 to 3 months between experiences, because that's how slow and how long it takes serotonin to rebuild in your brain after MDMA causes a massive dump of it. And when you're dosing more than that, you're constantly depleting a storage container that never gets a chance to fully fill up. So it's like you're dipping below the reserve tank, man, and it's almost like you're running on empty. And at that point, you can cause, myriad of damage. I don't even want to think about some of the damage that I caused that I feel even to this day I might still be recovering from. So these experiences aren't all rainbows and butterflies, baby. There is a lot of shit that can go wrong. And you really do have to be careful, and you should never trust those silly dealers. And this is me trying to spin this absolutely wacky story into somewhat of a safety video, which I think I've successfully done. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave it with a big thumbs up, and let me know below if you want to hear more about my crazy adventures when I first discovered drugs, because this is just one of many horribly awful yet probably entertaining and good safety message MDMA-esque videos. Anyway, again, if you like our new mega awesome high quality hoodies, they are super soft. As you come to realize from me, the quality is always there. You can visit psychsubstance.shop, link in the video description, and order one of the first 100 or pre-order one of the premium quality ones. You can also support us on Patreon. Your support means a lot. We're currently going through some absolutely awesome stuff with YouTube. Yeah, let's not even talk about it. We're going to keep positive light going on here. I'm not even going to focus on some of that dark stuff because we're only going to see the light. Can't know the light's there without the darkness, and we're going to use the contrast to our advantage. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like. For the algorithm, leave a comment. If you haven't already, hit the bell. Oh my gosh, I'm just commanding you to do so much stuff, and honestly, I am so grateful for all of you guys who watch and comment and subscribe to my channel. means a lot. I love all you guys. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something from my crazy ramblings. Till next time, take care.